everyone.
Hello, dear captains of industry.
Welcome. So I don't see any sunglasses on.
That's what we really needed, you guys, is captain hats.
Faith, Augie, Richard, come on. Where are the shades? You guys know. You guys know the game.
Love
Augie,
it.
In the car somewhere. I don't know where mine are.
Augie lives on Vancouver Island, where you only need sunglasses about 3 months of the year.
I love Vancouver Island. Don't talk smack about Vancouver
Yeah,
Island.
you're thinking of England, Chad.
Well, that's for sure.
It
Portland used to be that way too, but now
Yeah.
we get a lot of sun and fires.
Right. I would say,
Glasses for the fires.
what's that?
Might need the sunglasses for all of the glare from the fires.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Actually, this is interesting, but so at least in Portland, we don't have any of the smoke. But if you go to the New York Times, you can watch the smoke basically spread across all of North America, except for the West Coast. So even though the fires are coming from us, we're just spreading the love across the country.
Oh, that's why it's overcast in Vermont today.
Yeah, if it smells a little smoky, you can thank us.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, getting some good folks showing up.
How many people we got going? 60. Wow, clicking in.
Hello again, everybody. Hello again, folks. Turn on your cams. That's so great. Christy and Kevin and everybody else. Dave, of course. Peter
We
Bass.
did.
Put those shades away, John Nickel. They're the best. They're my kind of shades.
Exactly.
Industrial strength.
Yeah, well, these are officially a blue light blocker glass.
Ooh, nice.
Please. Actually,
Safe
John,
and
All
cool.
right.
it's basically like going to the gym for his eyes, John's eyes.
At first, we thought he was making a statement about rather being on site at a plant than being here.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Looking shades. Kev, what do you got, man? Come on, where your shades at? Hallie, you can put, as Greg can show you, Hallie, you can put sunglasses over regular glasses.
Yes. I
Greg
do.
can demonstrate that.
There you go.
It's especially important if you're very old, just
Yeah,
to do what
right.
Greg does.
How dorky am I?
Not at all. No, not dorky.
I don't mind assuming that position.
Ogie, shades keep changing.
How's that, Chad?
Wait, let me see.
Oh, I love those small little, yeah.
I like the
yeah.
3D ones
Glasses.
better. The 3D ones look good too. Let's see those, Ogie.
I believe Dave Hall just became Zorro, or perhaps a bandit.
Found my eclipse glasses. Does that count?
Oh, nice.
Oh,
I
wow.
can't see anybody now.
Yeah, you're looking. Open your webcam. What's going on?
Yeah, Richard just made a comment about closed captioning. So we had some people ask for some captioning yesterday, and we figured out how to do it. If you like the captioning, you're more than welcome to keep it on. If you go to the bottom bar of Zoom, you will actually now see, in theory, a live transcript CC little indicator. You can press that and you can turn it off and on, or you can make it bigger, I think. So you can control that. Some people find it helpful, other people find it distracting. So thanks for that tip. We're learning, we're listening.
Yes, thanks for the feedback.
Should we get this party started?
Let's do
Yeah, I
it.
think we got 80. That's
a quorum.
That's a threshold. All right. So let me just kick off. Thank you, everyone, for attending yesterday. I thought it was a great discussion. I think we got a lot of great feedback at the end of yesterday's session. We're going to try to incorporate that. Some feedback about breakout sessions. We're especially trying to keep them small as we can be, with as many people as we have. So we definitely heard that feedback. There was a piece of feedback about axing the sunglasses, and we dropped that feedback because we like them.
Wait, but we also got feedback that you wanted more props. It was confusing, so we just kept with the same prop.
Right. So anywho, today, a little different. Yesterday was kind of a variety of things, thinking about the future, thinking about different things. Today is more kind of focused on kind of the research paper that we did last year, kind of what came out of the research paper, and kind of leading us more towards what type of research do we want to do next. So it's going to be a lot of breakout sessions talking about different ideas. And the way this is working is we're letting really our members decide really where to finally land on a research paper. But we're using the greater SEM community on this call to help steer us in the direction to help inform the quarterly membership roundtables on really what the community wants for research. So today's an important day to kind of cast your vote on where you think the next piece of research, the information that your program or your implementation needs most to help inform your SEM program. So we're looking forward to a great discussion today. And as I said before, just for other people that just jumped on, we heard your feedback about the breakout sessions, and we're going to try to do a little bit better today. It's a big group, so we're going to try to keep them as small as possible. So bear with us and keep asking questions in the chat, or feel free to take yourself off mute and shout it out. All right, I'll hand it over to Wendy now.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. So I'll just go through the agenda, and then we're going to go back to the gallery view. And then after that, we're gonna dig in. So today, like Greg said, it's a really non-complicated day, which is great for us, but a little bit more of herding of cats, because what we did is we expanded the research topics and the member chosen topics. I'll get into that in a minute. And we created more breakout groups. So we recognize that we're going to be a lot of people on the call. So between this past week and yesterday, we actually worked to try to create more breakout groups to get into smaller sections. The research topics are really defined by what the research topic or what the funded research showed and what the quarterly member roundtable discussions presented out of that. So we're going to be talking about 6 different research topics we're going to be looking at moving forward. We're going to spend about 30 minutes in those breakout groups really digging into where we want to go, and then you'll be voting on where the community goes, where the collaborative takes it. At the next quarterly member roundtable, we'll probably be refining and actually coming to an answer. The member chosen topics are based on topics that we surveyed the members from right before the quarterly member roundtable, and they came up with 3 different topics that they really wanted to focus on outside of the research. And we'll be getting into what those are in the second half of the session. There's only 3 topics, but we've actually doubled the number of breakout groups. So there's going to be 6 breakout groups again. So there'll be 6 breakout groups, or 2 with each of the same topic. So 3 topics, but 6 breakout groups. Again, that's to dig in. We're going to be spending about 30 or more minutes in that group. So we're listening to your feedback. We heard you. And then the last thing, we'll be wrapping up. So today's really about small breakout groups and getting direction for the collaborative, and also understanding what you guys want to learn. Any questions on that? All right. Well then, Chad, let's go back to the gallery. So if you can stop sharing. We're going to play a little game, which I know what you're thinking. How do you play a game on Zoom? I'll tell you, it's called Common Ground. I learned about it at a different workshop. Has anybody played Common Ground before? No. Perfect. Okay. I
don't even understand the concept.
Yeah, especially, I know, right? At this day and age, it's hard to find. So I actually did this exercise at an equity training, and it really helped bring the group together before kind of digging into harder topics. And so I thought it might be kind of fun for us to get to, it's basically kind of a get to know you, to recognize that we're all on common grounds, or we have commonality with some things with people, and then other things are different. So the idea is everyone will start by turning off their cameras, and I'm going to say, are you this? And if you are, then you turn your camera on and you can kind of see who does what. So we'll start with a really, really, really easy one. The first one I will do is, I'm going to turn off my video as well. So go ahead and turn off your video. All right. I see some people, Shelly, Pamela, but you guys can stay on. You can be everything to everyone. That's okay too. All right. If you are a dog person, turn on your video. I love it. Greg's
hope
trying
that's
really
everyone.
hard not to judge people who are not dog people right
Let's
now.
hope that's everyone, people.
I'm trying to show my dog too. She's asleep. I don't want to mess it up.
All right, go ahead and turn off your cameras. Okay. If you are a cat person, I don't know why you would be, go ahead and turn on your video. Oh, look at that. We've got some cat people, lots of cat people.
Oh, man.
I love them all. You love animals, Mary. I love it. Yes. Okay. Still just as strong a contingency, I think, for loving animals.
Are you doing
Okay, go
bird
ahead and
person?
turn off your videos.
I think dogs have it, though.
Okay. If you love the mountains, turn on your video. Yay. Yeah, look at that. Chad's pointing to pictures in the back. John's got a picture of the mountains in his background. All right, go ahead and turn off your camera. If you are an ocean person, turn on your camera. I am not a water person. Kind of. We got a so-so from Chad there.
He says with a fountain, I mean, a lake in the background. Ms. Not water person.
Yes.
What
Well,
if you're
that
a
is
bay-
technically.
What if you're a bay person?
You can be a bay person. It's really about water versus mountain. Yes. The picture in my little table there is actually Lake Plivice in Croatia. Great place if you haven't been.
So Wendy, explain rivers then. Like, what if you're a river person? Aren't you both?
I kind of feel like you are both, Kevin, because I
Yeah.
love like mountain rivers, right? But oceans, ugh, I'm glad they're there. They do a lot for the planet, but they're not really my thing.
So
Water.
we're really,
lakes.
yeah. So we're talking freshwater versus saltwater with you, Wendy, is what it comes down to. You just don't like salt water.
Are we here for, is this a therapy session for me? I don't know.
What if we meet halfway and say brackish?
Yeah, that's right. It's like it's a brackish thing. I like to stand in between the river and the ocean. All right. If you live on the West Coast, turn on your video. Ooh. Woo! West Coast is the best coast. Nice. Okay.
Wow.
Turn off your video. If you live on the East Coast, turn on your video.
All right, East Coast
Nice.
peeps. Woohoo! Yeah, East Coast. Let's give a shout out to East Coast.
Woo
Get
woo!
it done. Get it done.
East Coast is the Beast Coast.
That's right.
I think it's the least coast. Hold on. a second.
Right. Okay, go ahead and turn off your video. Okay, if you live in the middle part of North America, turn on your screen. We've got some middle North Americans
I
here.
mean the thing that really holds this country together. Is that what you're saying?
The fruit basket.
The
The
glue.
fruit basket, yeah.
That's right. Okay, if you go ahead and turn off your videos. If you have been working on SEM for 5 or less years, turn on your camera. We're calling you newbies. If you're a
Nice.
newbie, hello newbies.
Oh,
So great to
wow.
have
That's
you.
We love you all.
All right. If this is, well, actually, I'm going to do that later. Okay, you can go ahead and turn off your video. If you have been working on SEM for 5 to 10 years, do the math real quick. I'll give you a second. Go ahead and turn on your cameras. All right. All right. You guys are middle-aged.
Okay.
Congratulations when it comes to SEM.
I'm
Good
afraid what
little
comes next,
villagers.
Wendy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, define working, because
Right. I'm not gonna nitpick. You can put yourself
Okay.
in whatever pod you want to. All right. If you have been working on SEM for 10 or more years, go
Time
ahead and
to
turn on your
retire,
video.
people. Time to retire.
That's
Hold on.
right.
I'm taking a nap. Hold on one second.
It's a senior's nap. It's nap time. We'll get you some snacks, Chad.
I'm gonna lay on this couch.
All right, go ahead and turn off your video. Okay, I think this is a fun one, but maybe because it's near and dear to my heart. If you were an SEM participant turned life dedicator Kool-Aid drinker, turn on your videos. I always like to see who else was an SEM participant. Emma, Rory, yes. Love it. Kevin. Some great people. There might be some other. All right. So there's a few of us. Yep. We know what that's like to drink the Kool-Aid. All right. Go ahead and turn off your videos. All right. The last one that I wanted to do is if this is your first SEM Summit, turn on your video. We'd like to welcome you. Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Glad that you guys could make it. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. Hopefully you will like it enough to come again. Maybe even in person next time. You'll have to get out of your PJs though. So, all right. Well, without further ado, Chad, you want to bring back up the PowerPoint? That'd be great.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in to the cost effectiveness research, and I'm going to probably hand it over to John Nickel is my guest. John, are you the person who can kick it off for us?
Yeah, I can kick it off. Some of you, and hopefully most of you, have seen our paper that was completed somewhere in March or April for some research that was over a good year or more that was done by ACEEE and LBNL, DOE and LBNL. And I want to, first of all, thank both of those organizations for their great efforts on that research. And what you're going to hear from Peter Thurkelson, hoping he's on, is a summary of that research and in the highlights, I guess, of that. So Peter, you want to take it away?
Sure, thanks, John. Whoever is controlling slides, whoever is the omnipotent master in the sky, is there?
Yes, and actually,
Peter, you're going to want to run. There's a turkey behind you.
And do you want, and Peter,
this came up on a meeting yesterday to see how long can you go with the turkey background and no one mentions it. I think,
about
Wendy,
10 seconds.
You set a record for quick turkey mentions, so congratulations. This is actually an endorsed LBNL backdrop. This is a shot taken at the site at Berkeley Labs. This is a real encounter on a real normal day in Berkeley Labs. So if you are fearful of turkeys, please do not come to the Berkeley Lab site. You may have traumatic experiences. Chad, it must be a Menti thing, so this must be you're doing now. Chad looks like he's thrown up a Menti poll that, as John mentioned, this research report that was conducted in collaboration with ACEEE and Berkeley Lab, funded by Department of Energy and other stakeholders at the direction of the collaborative. It's been out for a little while now. It was publicized by ACEEE through a number of email posts and other on North America SEM Collaborative webinars. And that's kind of what we want to check in on, is like, okay, is the message getting out that this thing just exists? And maybe you've cracked it open, because creating a year-and-a-half-long research activity effort that involves a dedicated team of 5 to have it rot on the some AWS server somewhere, probably in Virginia, is a very disappointing idea. So we would love for people to be aware, open it up. Even if you hate it, that's fine. And tell us why. We'll take all feedback. But I'd glanced at it, haven't done anything yet. That's a fantastic place to be. At least you know it exists. And when you have a question, you can go, oh, there's something that talks about that. That's a great start to be at. We're going to work on the 20 of the what right now. Chad, I'll let you decide when you call us.
Yeah, I think we're good.
You just did. All right. Well, we're going to quickly elevate all 20 of those, the what's, into, yeah, I know what's going on in that, with one quick slide. Right, here it goes. You now have changed your answer for sure, as long as you keep your headphones on and pay attention. This research, again, as I mentioned, was a collaborative effort, really focused on the big words of persistence and cost effectiveness. We drilled down with interviews of SEM program managers, administrators, whichever term you want to use. Thank you, Tina, for linking the report in the chat right now. And we wanted just to highlight a quick couple of the key conclusions here on this slide. First is that all the SEM programs we spoke with reported that they were cost effective. That's awesome. That's good. Well, probably they would have gone away if they weren't, we assume, but we don't know. We found that cost effectiveness tests the inputs and assumptions differ so much utility to utility, making the values across the different programs really non-comparable, which is interesting. It's understandable. Everyone has a different regulator, a different history, and a different way of doing things, and maybe that's fine. But if we do want to dig in more to understand effectiveness across SEM programs and different program design elements, we'll probably need to dig into that a little bit to find some more comparable basis of analysis. EUL's effective useful life is a very powerful little single number that exists in the hearts of all most efficiency programs, very, very widely between the different programs. And that most of these numbers are not based on primary research within that utility territory about that specific program. And our takeaway was that sounds, well, less than good, but maybe that's really complicated. Maybe that's really costly for young programs. What would you do? And so our kind of question is, what could be done about that? There's also a lot of variation of what goes into that. Do capital projects go into that? Do they not? Do we discount things that may have been identified before the SEM engagement? What does that look like? You know, is an open question or something we'll get into the breakout groups. Is there work to be done here, or is this kind of an issue of we're at the mercy of the system as it is? And the last bullet is that SEM programs vary greatly, and that the SEM concept of continual improvement challenges traditional cost effectiveness metrics. It's been discussed yesterday, and I think it's you know, a known point, and a lot of the work CEE is currently engaged in is trying to start to just understand the landscape of what people do under the name of SEM. The minimum elements are a great framework of a basis of the different types of topics that might be included in an SEM program, but it doesn't dictate that they all are in an SEM program, and doesn't dictate to what degree of specificity or robustness or training is provided based upon those different topics. And every program approaches SEM a little differently to meet its own objectives and its own needs. That makes sense. But it does make understanding these programs in comparison more difficult. And then when you look back at the traditional persistence and cost effectiveness metrics that most utilities use, they really were designed 30, 40 years ago around very traditional capital and deemed programs, very discrete interventions. We do a pre-assessment, ideally. We do something, change some light bulbs, change a motor, put some steam traps in, whatever. And then we walk away and we set up some meters and we monitor it for a given period of time. And then we do a little bit of math and boom, we got some savings. SEM, the idea of continual improvement, where we have year-on-year engagement or alumni networks, or we've now transformed the customer so that they are managing energy effectively themselves, that's not a one-and-done intervention. How does that idea of continual improvement fit with these traditional metrics? Are there alternative metrics we need? And that's a big open question we have there at the bottom. Let's go ahead and move on. As I mentioned, we spoke with 24 SEM programs across the country, and I'm so excited to see the work that the collaborative is doing in terms of building out just even an understanding of SEM, and I think it was called SEM adjacent programs are out there. We certainly thought we knew which programs were out there. In total, we were able to identify 42 different programs. We were able to speak with 24. Who knows how many more are out there? And I was putting, you know, lots and lots of minds together to rack up who and where there are SEM programs across these two countries. These are the ones we spoke with. So thank you if we spoke to you, because we definitely took a lot of your time. And these last two slides, which we'll probably blow through pretty quickly because of timing, speak to some of those key conclusions. The first one on the left speaks to the EUL concept I mentioned earlier, that the EUL value across SEM programs is varied, and that by and large is not based upon primary research of that specific program, and that we do see that there is a difference. Sometimes capital projects are included and sometimes they're not. The right-hand graph shows the reported cost effectiveness values for SEM programs discretely and for the portfolio in which that SEM program lives. The colorful dots, the non-black dots, indicate linkages where we had data for both the SEM program and its parent portfolio. So little red dot on the left matches with the little red dot on the right, and with the teal and the kind of yellowish color ones. And you can generally see, yes, the SEM program by and large is more cost effective on average than the portfolio, but it's hard to discern, it's hard to break out. again, differences in test types and whatnot make these values hard to compare. Go forward one more slide, please. And lastly, a slide that you have no chance of reading because it's way too detailed, but it's meant to hopefully entice some data nerd in you to dive deep into this report and go study it for an hour and then fall asleep because it's so dense, is trying to break down and understand this concept of cost effectiveness within the SEM programs and how they may challenge traditional cost effectiveness metrics. So this breaks down the different programs we talked to and roughly tries to segment them by some characteristics and look at, is the reported answer for those characteristics more likely to apply with traditional cost effectiveness metrics or less likely to apply to those traditional cost effectiveness metrics? At the bottom, we have some stats that are in really small font. Wendy, I'm surprised you let me get away with that. You're such the data visualization expert. There we go. Dynamics on the fly improvements, continual improvement, here we go. A really interesting kind of cascading of findings. 75% of these interviewed programs said that they use some form of SEM framework, minimum elements, ready, Energy Star, whatever have you. 63 of the reported programs consider the ability of the customer to self-manage SEM practices after the program ends. Doesn't mean to what level, but it means that they have considered it. 17% of programs report they assess customer energy management activities at the conclusion of program, do some type of energy management assessment, some type of proprietary or publicly available tool of how the customer is managing energy themselves now. 5% of reporting programs assess the energy management activities beyond the customer participation in the program, do some type of either third-party or self-evaluation of their customers. Are you still doing what we hopefully trained you to do? Wow, but all that said, more than 50% of reporting programs identified one or more stakeholders, regulator, utility management, as being interested in knowing if customer energy management activities persist beyond the SEM programs.
Hey, Peter,
Those are the three rush.
One quick question was whether or not you looked at the difference between commercial versus industrial programs.
We do in the report. We dive into that difference. We across those 24 ask what their primary sectors that they focus on are. We do different breakdowns against primarily they're focused on, classified as industrial or commercial within a scattering of others also. Where we had the ability to break out those differences in some kind of, at least semi-confident way, we do so. For these macro key takeaways, we have not here.
Thanks.
Great. We've got a closing poll because, Peter, we know how much you love polling. And so for those of you, again, who did respond to the last poll.
Chad, don't put your love of Minty on others.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, yeah, I'm like all about polling all the time. And so go to, if you haven't gone here already, please go to menti.com, menti.com, type in these 8 numbers or one long number, depending on how you look at it, and respond to this poll. And again, we'll be using this polling for a few of the times here for the rest of the day. So what excites you about this research that Peter's given over you? And we'll be going into greater detail here, but at least based upon what you've seen, what's exciting? Yeah, Peter, see some interesting things here. Of course, difference in cost effectiveness can be used to sell SEM. I assume definitely more to program administrators, although there's definitely some findings, Peter. I was not surprised. It's not surprising as you kind of think about your methodology, but to like understand the value of SEM, it's just a very rich report with all kinds of information in there that could apply to end users, that could be interesting to them. Cost effectiveness is settled.
What excites you about this research, Thurkelson? That was a fantastic answer.
Oh yeah. Thurkelson and
there was a staff member when I was getting my master's degree that would only use my last name, and it was very intimidating, even though it was my own name.
All right, Thurkelson.
Nice job,
John. He was and will always be a Marine.
This is great. Excellent. Well, thank you.
I thought he will always be a turkey. That's
a good nickname too.
Yep.
Brought upon by.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I think we're good. Go. Thank you so much, Peter, for that overview and for the sharing the insights and for all of your involvement. For those of you who responded to, this is where it gets silly. But seeing everybody's involvement, for those of you who responded to this, to their surveying, and of course, people involved in our ongoing research. So thank you in advance to all of you. So with that, I think we go from here back to John.
Yeah, the presentation. Yeah, let's go. So yeah, my role here is to try to get you educated on the 6 topics that sort of rose to the top when we were at the quarterly membership review meeting and talked about the paper and the results, and Peter Thurkelson did a summary of that, and people looked at, you know, what are some next steps for this research, and some of the steps were sort of building directly upon the research that was finished, and some of it was sort of, well, what about this too, you know, so some new topics too that really were part of this paper, but maybe a little deeper into the 100 plus pages of the report. This again, the research that was done was very broad, and yeah, obviously the honing was around cost effectiveness and persistence, but there was a lot of things that came out of that that are in there that we could still mine, and would love to hear if anybody digs into this goes into the research report. If there's some things that you find interesting, you know, send us a note, and we can you know, think about how we can publicize that, I guess. All right, so here are the 6 again potential research topics that have floated to the top. For the next about 45 minutes, you're going to first of all learn about these, and then you're going to have a discussion group around what are some pros and cons of, and which ones seem to be the most useful going forward. And then you'll get to, you know, put in your vote and basically rank these possible research topics, so we can get a sense of where people are at with this. So the first one is, what is the quote right? Yeah, thanks, Jed. Or yeah, I think it's Jed. What is the right EUL to use for non-capital SEM projects? And you know, that goes back to what Peter was talking about, where there's a high variation in the EULs that across programs for operational types of savings. And so some programs had some primary research, but most of them did not around those EULs. So, you know, can we find a way to get more accurate and to get a better EUL that hopefully will really not only give good cost effectiveness for the SEM programs, but give the regulators more confidence in those numbers, those cost effectiveness numbers, with some research around the EUL. So that's in terms of the way this might be done. You know, again, just as Peter had done with the original research, is to go back to these programs, maybe link in with their programs and their customers, and maybe look at doing some primary research. In other words, looking at actual projects, actual operational changes, you know, and look at sort of the long range impacts of those changes. You know, is it persistent? How long are those measures saving the energy that we're counting on? And then building into that, you know, how much energy is saved with those measures to sort of weigh out those things. So that's the first one, first of 6. And the first 3 are really building on the previous research. The second one is, you know, given the SEM differences from typical DSM program measures, what other ways are good to measure SEM cost effectiveness to really capture you know, the long-term impact? And again, the research showed that, you know, typically cost effectiveness tests do not account for this investment upfront with SEM to help a customer, you know, get to a continual improvement approach, and what impacts that would have in future savings, which we, you know, SEM should get credit for because of the impact of that continual improvement approach. So, you know, so that's, you know, sort of the reason behind looking at different ways to look at cost effectiveness. And then, you know, potential approach might be to, you know, survey existing programs, how they measure SEM, and really survey stakeholders on potential new ways that could be devised to measure that cost effectiveness to get a better, I guess, a better representation of the benefits mainly of SEM. So that's number 2. And then number 3, building on the current research. Next slide, please. Is, looking at the capital projects that came out, that some programs in their cost effectiveness included capital projects. Some programs in there, or some programs allowed the SEM program to claim savings from capital projects, others just operational types of savings. So really looking at what is the impact of SEM on capital projects as part of this, and if there is some impact, how much, what is the general savings results on the capital side coming from SEM approaches. So again, that's the main point of trying to, again, build potentially more cost effectiveness into the SEM programs. Therefore, we can, like someone mentioned on the breakout or the Mentimeter, that, we can sell this better, right? If we have a more robust understanding of the SEM impact, all of the benefits, the cost effectiveness will be even better. So that's sort of the intent of this particular research topic. And how to go after it, what's an approach, looking at the utility program data, investigating the impact of SEM on capital projects, maybe comparing one customer who's part of SEM with before they became a part of SEM, what is their capital project participation versus, once they become a part of SEM. That kind of approach might be a way to look at that. So that's number 3, and that's the three that really are continuing more directly on this cost effectiveness report that LB&L and ACEEE did. So the 4th one is getting into sort of a new research topic, but it is related to what you'll find in this broad report, that research report that Peter led the way with. What are the best practices, this particular, and they're all sort of around sort of best practices. What are the best practices to design SEM programs to teach to customers energy management practices? In other words, how do people do that in various programs, and look at what are the pros and cons there? And so, there are, many different SEM approaches, as I think we were talking about yesterday, in how between cohorts and individual approaches, all those different other nuances. So what's the pros and cons of those? What's have been some results maybe that, from different ways that people are approaching the SEM execution, basically. And it's not necessarily to come up with a standard, this is the way it should be done. It's more about, let's investigate and have a discussion of what people are doing, and have it, more formalized, I guess, than just a general, grab a beer and discuss it type of thing. So again, the way to do that is, surveying current and past programs to make sure we understand the various main approaches to SEM, and looking at how they teach, customers to do energy management practices, and then look at the, again, the results, and survey both the program and stakeholders for input on the pros and cons of their approach. So that's number 4. And then number 5 is, again, more of a best practice. What are the best practices for technology deployment? Things like sub-metering or NPI dashboards, to maximize this continual improvement approach, engagement that we're trying to make sure that the customers, pick up and use. And so, that's another question, is what are different programs doing with that? What are some, main approaches to that? And then what are the pros and cons to those various approaches that we can learn from as a community? The potential research approach for that would be to, maybe review, obviously different programs, and first of all, maybe review the data requirements for how do you get SEM to sort of become more of a continual engagement with different technologies, and then look at their various programs and the way they've done that, and again, surveying and all that in terms of the pros and cons. So that's, again, number 5. And then number 6, the last one, and your breakout folks will refresh your memories on these as you discuss them. So, you know, don't worry about trying to memorize it all right now or anything. But number 6 is, what are the best practices for serving small or medium-sized customers? And at this, you know, this point, we're really sort of talking generally industrial, but, you know, you can also think of a bit more commercial, again, on the smaller and medium-sized range of those. Because there's certainly some programs that are trying to dig into that and have dug into that to try to modify their SEM approach to optimize, right, the impact on these smaller and medium-sized customers. So let's learn from that. Let's learn, you know, how they've done that, what's been successful, what hasn't been successful. Again, those pros and cons around that whole idea of trying to meet the smaller and medium-sized needs and the resources that they may or may not have to really do SEM. So those are the 6. I don't know if there's the next slide there. I think, Chad. Yeah, so we're going to break out. I think, if I understand, Andrew, we're going to break out sort of randomly. You're not going to pick a group. You're just going to automatically be put into one of 6 groups. But all 6 groups will be discussing these same 6 research topics. And then, you know, have some discussion within your group about, first of all, the first sort of half will be about the first 3, the ones that are sort of continuing with the current research. Talk about those, you know, again, you know, what are some pros, what are some cons to going forward with those 3, and start to get an idea of which 3 you would like, you know, to support, and in what rank. We're going to have sort of a ranking. You'll get to rank these 3 from one, you know, top to bottom. And then, you know, we'll come back again and vote on those. So I think we're ready for the breakouts, and we're going to have about 30 minutes. So, and hopefully facilitators, you can show the slides I sent out earlier today to help remind people what we're, you know, the various 6. Anything else, Chad or Wendy?
So to emphasize safety as we zoom you into these breakout rooms, just kind of fasten your seatbelts.
On your safety glasses.
Keep your arms
The exits
in,
are
yeah.
2 to the front, 2 to the side, and 2 to the back.
Yeah, arms in the window. Yeah.
Be funny.
On that note, it is time. We're back to it. So we're gonna do a quick vote. I mean, John, do you want to describe any more about the vote here, about the process?
Well, I just want to make sure, Chad, did you set it up to so people can rank, right?
I'm sorry?
Did you set it up such that they're going to rank the 3 or just vote for one?
I think you will rank the 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess what you'll look at is the first 3, if that's right, Chad, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So start ranking, I guess.
Yeah. So these are the first 3. Again, the next vote after this we'll do is the first 3 that kind of carried over from before, and then these are the next 3 after this will be your favorite of the new ones that kind of came out of the quarterly member roundtable.
Right.
And for some reason you can't see what's going on here. The choices are other ways to measure SEM cost effectiveness, the right EUL, the useful life for non-capital SEM projects, and the impact of SEM on capital projects or projects.
Tight race.
Sorry. What's that, John?
Tight race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is really, this is at 54.
And I had money on this. No, I'm kidding.
This is like American politics, John.
Zing from the Canadians. And
if only it included ranked choice voting, right?
Or a legitimate third party.
Fortunately, the top bar is the non-participating voters.
You know, I would love to know, did people feel like 30 minutes was enough to get through this topic? Should we have given more time? We're trying to find that nice balance here.
Almost enough.
It was almost enough time. Well, that is good, Kim, because next time we're giving you 40 minutes. Oh, and we brought a dog. We brought a dog in.
You wanted for the dog people. Yeah. People look away. I'm just kidding. This is Pearl. All right.
Oh, Pearl.
Yeah. John, should we close it down? I don't see a clear winner.
I don't see a clear winner either. It's interesting that they're so close. And does it show how many people voted, or is that?
Yeah.
We just go with
Bottom right.
Total. So you can only get one vote. Well, I guess you rank them. So I would have to look in the back end, John, I guess to figure out the exact numbers.
Okay.
But yeah, not a clear, I wouldn't say there's a
slam dunk.
There's a
But
loser.
the more
As
we
I
try
want to
out
say,
them,
there's no slam dunk. I mean, my reference is to basketball, which of course the Milwaukee Bucks won the championship last night.
Congratulations.
Oh.
Well, I'm happy a small market team won.
Hey, the first time in 50 years, so come on. Right? So, anyway.
I was pulling for the Suns, but I'm happy the Bucks won, so that's really great. Okay, let's go to the next question then. This is working. There we go. Of the new research topics, please vote on your favorite. The three choices: best practices in teaching energy management practices, best practices in technology deployment, and best practices to serve smaller to medium-sized customers.
So these are being voted on without discussion, right?
You just had 30 minutes of discussion.
Oh, we only
Yeah.
got
Just-
to the first three.
You had to
Oh.
reboot your computer in that time.
We've
Oh,
been
yeah, oh,
there,
good.
John.
All right.
Who
fair
was your
enough.
facilitator, John?
I'm not at liberty to disclose that.
He had to
Good
step
man.
out and use the loo. So
We'll be noting that and taking it back.
I noticed the question is your favorite of the new research topics, not like the which one would be most helpful, meaningful, informative.
Yeah.
You're like, I just like this. Right.
I just think that would
Yeah,
be
that's
interesting research.
Yeah.
That's beside the point.
A lot of discussion in my breakout group about how topic number 4 sort of encapsulated 5 and 6. So just throwing that out there, that even though they were separate, there was a lot of similarities. And being someone who's very indecisive, I appreciated I'm picking the option that encompasses all of the other options. So group.
Katie, you're leading the witness.
Right.
Tina also mentioned in the chat that she felt like the first 3 were also very similar. So maybe there's a way to frame something where we could get a research topic where the top 2 kind of come together. It's interesting.
I think it would really help to see the specifics and to get these mapped out a little bit better. I mean, to me, as someone who does research, I'm more inclined to things that are more defined rather than more expansive and all-inclusive, because I don't know how to design research that's completely expansive and all-inclusive. I'm trying to chunk down to something that I could get a real answer on if possible, or an indicator. So I think, unlike Katie, I go the exact opposite direction. I want research that can be done, like beginning, middle, end, the project's done and you learn something. Whereas some of these topics are just humongous.
So we may have to take some bite-sized chunks out of the apple first.
Yeah.
I think the first one in particular, best practices to serve small, medium-sized customers. That's that could be anything, right? And I think I agree with how Kim's phrased that. Kim, it may help to break these up into smaller chunks, bite-sized chunks, and be more specific and targeted, potentially.
Yeah, good points.
Great. Well, then let's get back to the slide. I think we're, so John, you can discuss some of the research next steps.
Yeah, just one more, and I think Wendy brought it up before, which is go back to the quarterly membership review meetings, and at least as part of that, try to finalize some research priorities. Again, maybe looking at bite-sized chunks, right? Things like that. And again, sort of start to flesh out how is this going to, once we do come up with those priorities, then how is that going to get done, basically? And then obviously, then let's get going with the research and hopefully get some results, as soon as we can. So that's the next steps.
Great.
Go ahead.
And before we get to member topics, I forgot my my Kermit the Frog slide, which is take a break. We're taking a break, so we're gonna have a 10-minute break. stretch your legs, grab something to eat if you're on the West Coast, or if you're just a snacker, feel free to do it. Chad will be leading us in a series of push-ups if you want to stay on. And I will see you guys back at 11:35. This is the second and last breakout group that we are going to be covering. So as I mentioned at the beginning of today, we pulled the members back in, I think I'm getting some feedback. So you might want to put yourself on mute. If people put themselves on mute, we might get rid of that. There we go. We pulled the members back in May or June, right before the first and most recent quarterly member roundtable, to figure out if they had a group of experts in the room, what was the one burning question that they would ask them. And so from that, Chad and I kind of distilled that list of burning questions down into 3 different categories, and the members met to kind of discuss these kind of broader topics. And then from that came next steps, solutions, ideas to move things forward, perhaps things that still needed to be conversated around. And so what we're doing is we're taking these kind of member requested topics to dig into, taking the lessons learned and things like that from them. We'll be talking to you about them. And then just really, it's a bit of a choose your own adventure here. It's kind of, you get to decide which breakout group you want to go into and dig into. Now, again, there's 3 topics. There's going to be 6 breakout groups. So there's going to be each topic will get 2 breakout groups. Again, this is to try to keep the rooms smaller. So the first one is capital measure reconciliation. So best practices for capturing capital projects. It's a little bit connected to the research paper, so we can kind of continue to head down that path. Derek or Greg, do you want to add anything there? Going once?
An advertisement.
No. All right, but you could pitch to join your group if you wanted to.
I pitched to go to Greg's.
All right. Well, then Derek would not like to do work today. All right. The next one is greenhouse gas integration. So how we can actually integrate tracking of greenhouse gases, not grasses. Walter, Katie, do you want to add anything to this group? Any comments?
Just general. I mean, I think both of ours will be the same, so you can go to Walter mine either way. But we are also going to talk, about how greenhouse gases and decarbonization and SEM and all of that. It's pretty open-ended based on what the feedback from the QMR was, but that will be our discussion. Lively, I guarantee.
Great. Thank you. And then the third and final topic is future design possibilities. So this is really looking out into the future based on what we know about SEM now, what we've learned maybe over the last day or two, where we're going to go. Chad or Shelley, do you want to add anything?
This is just, how do you maintain that customer interest for the long term, and how do we deal with some of those other issues like cost effectiveness and yeah, how do we scale SEM? Could be all of those fun things.
And if you're trying to decide between Shelley or me, which group you want to go to, Shelley is an outstanding and recognized expert in utility program implementation and design. I have expertise in pop culture. So choose well. Choose well which one you want to get to.
I want to go to Chad's.
If you want to talk about Britney Spears and her conservatorship, then go to Chad.
Exactly.
All righty. So I believe we're going to breakout groups. You should have a breakout group little thing on the right-hand side there, and you can decide which group you want to go into. Oh man.
We had brilliance going on in ours. I'm sure like every other breakout of the same thing. The most brilliant points like right at the end, and then
that's how it always happens.
Hey Ted, nice to see you, by the way.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for letting me crash late. But so good to see so many familiar faces and names. Thanks. I'm anxious to hear what y'all came up with. I want to hear the brilliance.
Is that Ted Jones?
It is. Hey, Greg, how
in the
are you?
flesh. Good
I'm
seeing
actually in
you.
the car. I'm on my way to see you right now.
I can't believe you guys let Ted in here.
I know.
Disappointed.
Oh, who's
We'll
that
have to
old man?
All right. So it sounds like, were there good discussions? Was 40 minutes enough for you talkers? That was a 40-minute breakout group.
Yeah, we were able to break into a bunch of other discussions. So.
Okay. All right. So 35 minutes might be the sweet spot. It was an experiment you guys didn't know you were part of. That's what we were doing.
Okay. Non-talkers in our group to find out if they thought that if it was too long, they're like, no, 5 minutes would have been great.
I am introverted and I now don't ever want to see anybody again for the next 24 hours. All right. So for the next couple minutes here, what we're going to do to kind of recap is I'm going to ask each one of the facilitators to just give us a highlight of what you learned, where we're going next, who's doing what. You solved all the problems with your category. So we'll start with capital measure reconciliation. And Greg picked by random lottery.
Oh, man. God, you didn't give me a chance to prepare. Yikes. Lots of good discussion. You know, it's the question of we all get wrapped around the axle on trying to allocate savings. And frankly, we spend a little too much time doing that because it only matters to us, not to the customer. So, you know, the question is, you know, Marcus from BC Hydro had some good points about just, you know, should we not worry about things on a yearly basis, but really try to look at them more from a 5-year basis, whatever that EUL or agreed upon time frame is. Sounds like BC Hydro is a little further along than the rest of us. That was interesting. You know, and then there was other comments like, do the evaluators really need to be aware, more aware of the influence SEM has on other capital projects? And one possible solution was maybe for every capital project claimed, SEM gets a percentage of the savings. So I thought that was an interesting solution that was offered. You know, and the other big difficulty is timelines. Timelines don't really match up very well. The timeline to implement a lighting project could be a year, where SEM savings are happening quickly and, you know, real time as the program is developed, as the year is developing. So all those different things are colliding at each other. You know, I think the end of our discussion, we all agreed that this is something that needs to be dealt with. The exact construct on how to agree to approach this discussion, you know, could it be a focus group? Could it be a research paper? Not quite sure. So we didn't really land on that output from our.
Well, maybe Derek's group did. Derek, did you pick up where Greg left off? What was your conversation about?
I was going to say what he said, but no, we identified some of the same problems. You know, I think, you know, the attribution issue between SEM and capital projects, it starts with, you know, typically a higher incentive or just program rules that back out the SEM savings. There are some innovative things that could be done. I think Peter mentioned about Nova Scotia, how they're trying to think holistically and not look in the individual buckets of which program or silo it came from. We also said that there are some probable program models from like NYSERDA that has an EE, GHG, and carbon reduction program, as well as an energy manager program. But I think some of the challenges are in just seeing the value of the SEM savings. And, you know, it starts with the regulator. I think in California, I was saying, we benefit from the fact of having strong regulatory support to provide a higher net to gross and a higher EUL. If there's no value in seeing the upfront cost from paying for an energy manager and the EMS and others, then you have a difficult case to make on the untapped savings. In California, we kind of see the potential because it's defined in our potential goal studies. In other jurisdictions, you may have to be able to show that. So part of showing that this is a national trend could potentially raise the specter of this being a need for policymaking. So that's an opportunity. But I think in terms of focus groups and other ways to implement, I think, we just need to identify where the opportunities are, credit the implementer for the savings, and not worry about the attributions. I think that's kind of a general trend.
Oh, that's
I'll
an
leave it at
interesting
that.
conclusion. All right, greenhouse gas integration. Walt, Katie, do one of you guys want to kick us off and the other one can wrap up?
Sure. I mean, I think we had a good conversation. It's a big topic area, but I think there were some interesting points that were made, particularly in terms of some opportunities of things to look into going forward. I think there's, most people see a definite role for SEM programs in supporting decarbonization, but there's some challenges in terms of how much people can bring this into their current program design. Some of the metrics that are traditionally used now or to measure program success don't really look at greenhouse gas emissions, and to be frank, most utility programs aren't necessarily focused on that currently, but several people pointed out some of that's changing, particularly like in California, and we're seeing in Canada that new approaches are being adopted. There's some opportunities to certainly introduce people into some of these areas that between the overlap between energy management and decarbonization strategies. So, that's making more strategic decisions around energy and decarbonization, whether it's how you use renewables or what fuels you're looking at, or even thinking about whether there's a trade-off between decarbonizing just by a VPA or versus maybe efficiency. SEM can play a role in informing people there. So as far as some of the next steps, I think there's some opportunities to look at some examples of how SEM programs are being used to support SEMs, look at the benefits more of the relationship between energy management and greenhouse gas reductions, and maybe do some inventorying of what other programs are doing, and then look at what administrators are beginning to think about as far as the role of their programs. What are they on the hook for as far as decarbonizations, and then what role can SEM programs play in supporting that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Well, the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking was what type of, I don't want to use the word lobbying, but advocacy support could the North American SEM Collaborative play to the regulators and to different utilities to support getting the eye on the ball of greenhouse gases? It's interesting barriers there. Katie, how about you? Anything you want to add?
Sort of building off of that, we did have a discussion about how the idea of greenhouse gas reductions and decarbonization is pretty varied depending on where you are located geographically in the country. In some areas, it's a much hotter topic than in others. And so while this might be something that is important overall, not all program administrators are including this in their SEM programs. And even in areas where this is important, maybe they haven't shifted to using greenhouse gas reductions or greenhouse gas and decarbonization as KPIs in the SEM program. So we're still focused on kilowatt hours and MMBTUs, but if we switch to greenhouse gas reductions, it may change certain focus areas of the SEM program itself. One topic that came up a lot was peak load reduction and shaving those peaks, because right now SEM, one of the big things that we pushed is, turning things off, and typically we turn things off when people aren't there, and there's typically not a lot of people in a facility overnight. And so nighttime power is when things are getting shut off, but nighttime power might be renewables, whereas peak power is typically the dirtier power and the more emissions heavy power. So that was sort of a whole area that we discussed. As for next steps, the thing that I thought was interesting as a program administrator was, unless program administrators value greenhouse gas reductions as a metric for our implementers, it's, our implementers are going to do what we ask them to do. And if we're not asking them to focus on greenhouse gas emissions, they're not going to do that. So we need to have that shift. And then one comment was that there's a real chance that SEM participants will start caring about this before the utilities do. And that might cause a disconnect in recruitment, since, you know, we're talking still about energy efficiency and they're talking about carbon reductions.
That's a really good point, Kate. Katie, how do we get on the forefront as opposed to be on our heels? Even though we're talking about this internally, but companies may have to get there faster than we can or than we are. Right. Yeah. Good point. All right. And finally, future design possibilities. You guys, this was an animal, but I will also add the most attended breakout groups were for future design possibilities. So that's right. All right, Chad and Shelly, do you want to kick us off? Talk about any future design possibilities you guys saw.
I can go first. So we had great discussion, great group. And I see in the chat that there was something about SEM as a wrapper. You know, that is super intriguing. But some of the discussion we had around that was, you know, do we need to, I think as Kel put it, do we need to date first before we get married? Do we need to earn their trust first, you know, before just jumping right into something as deep as SEM? And then another comment was, you know, can we expect a standard of energy, kind of like we're expecting a standard like safety today? And then, you know, could it all be done in parallel? So instead of requiring it, just make it, you know, super attractive to the customers. Another conversation was around, you know, industrial customers. They interact with state agencies a lot. You know, so we're offering them ways to do voluntary conservation, and, you know, how can we package that all together with water, gas, greenhouse gases, electricity, and you know, the whole package from different aspects. We did talk about, you know, how do we celebrate the accomplishments? It's so important for customers to really see the value, communicate the value upwards and onwards. And so had some really great ideas, you know, maybe giving achievement badges, you know, that folks can put, you know, on their website or, you know, on their email signatures, you know, promoting themselves and their company. There's the AEEE Wrench of the Year Award. There's like industrial leadership awards, you know, for different states. There's a great fast track application idea. You know, you earn a badge, you get to skip a few steps, that type of thing. We also talked about how you scale SEM service and programs at different levels. You know, does every large customer need to be kind of forced into an SEM program, or could there be some building blocks to help them get there? One person said, you know, they had SEM in a one-on-one perspective, so not in a cohort, but one-on-one, and then they encouraged them to join the workshop model, and that allowed them to have access, you know, to this group of peers. And now they said that they're very active in the peer-to-peer. So that could be, you know, kind of part of that building block method. We also talked about that concept of SEM without incentives. So, you know, how do you do that? Does that make sense? And I think, you know, one theme is, and I've certainly personally seen this, is the incentive is a really great recruiting tool. But then halfway through, sometimes the customers forget they're even getting an incentive. They're just so excited about all these other great things that they're getting from SEM. So, you know, really the biggest bang for the buck is those operational savings and that coaching that they're getting, right? And somebody mentioned, yeah, they had charged the customer to join the offering and then abandon that idea. But we're talking, well, gosh, what is a great recruiting tool? You know, what are those barriers to entry? How do we fix that? And forcing somebody to join a program, you know, as a wrapper, you know, could put people off. Don't want to see it as a chore. But, you know, maybe incentivizing or rewarding participation, you know, and it's, you know, as they go through continuous years. So ramping up each year, you know, can you beat your goals? Another idea was, yeah, tiered incentives for, you know, the greater percentage savings, then the greater the incentive. But don't forget to consider caps. But they did say that wasn't necessarily a game changer. Then, you know, the other thought is, you know, what if you decrease the incentive down the longer a customer is engaged? So yeah, use that incentive, you know, as that recruiting tool at the beginning, but then, you know, as they go, you know, maybe there isn't an incentive or it decreases significantly, you know, and again, just pointing to the fact that they get the benefit from the coaching and the operational savings. Somebody brought up milestone payments. You know, as they, you know, give you the data, you can pay them an incentive. I like that idea because we still need the information from them, right? So how do you keep them engaged? And then, you know, it was brought up, how do the people on the energy team, so the energy champions and all the team members, they don't actually see the incentives, right? So sometimes that gets put into some other fund. So how do we you know, entice that, get that direct incentive for the folks that are actually doing the work and get those incentives to go back into their funds for future projects, kind of like a little mini ESCO within their own company.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. One of the things that I think, Shelley, that you brought up that I have personal experience with is creating like a reward system or an award system. So at the end of each year, we started doing awards, and the amount of enthusiasm around a piece of paper to say that you're the best of something is amazing. It really actually was a game changer, I think, for at least the first couple of years. Was just, we also had an executive sponsor award, and then we had that executive sponsor come and talk at the award ceremony, which I think really helped legitimize a lot of what we were doing. So I think that's great. Chad, how about you? Any future design possibilities or next steps?
Yeah, I think it's something we could kind of riff on. We talked about what's in SEM, and yesterday, Walker talked, of course, about the minimum elements and some other things with this framework. Maybe some opportunities for us to maybe the community through the collaborative could interface with CE and the CE SEM committee to talk about kind of how to apply SEM, like understanding like the elements. How you can basically kind of right size SEM elements for different kinds of programs like SEM Lite or other kinds of programs that just where they are different because they have to be based upon the jurisdiction that the program's in or their unique customer requirements. So I think, yeah, kind of what's in the box, if you will. Definitely savings is a big thing where we're talking about trying to understand the rates of savings over time and the wells is the persistence of those. Energy Trust has done their persistence study. BC Hydro has done a study as well, and both have some interesting things that would be definitely value kind of bring together. I think, yeah, Tina Schnell suggests the idea of like a kind of a coordinated, rather than a centralized research project, but more like coordinated where different utilities or program administrators could analyze some of their data sets, and then we could kind of bring those together and identify some kind of macro commonalities to say, here's how we're seeing trends across different kinds of programs, what kind of takeaways or ahas can we come up with to help illustrate the value in multi-year programs. And again, also the differences sometimes between different kinds of programs that do include custom capital in their project and their savings, or they don't. And I think, again, there's so many variables to this. Definitely we've talked about this over the years. Remember Kevin Campbell and I talked about this about a year and a half ago at a Northwest Collaborative, like how many programs use SEM as almost their shock absorber for their other programs. And so if a custom or even retrofit kind of program, a prescriptive program underperforms, they may not never know it, but the SEM program will know it because they're the ones capturing all the savings or getting their savings taken away because of the underperformance. So I guess I'd say understanding what's included and what's not included in these different types of programs could be highly valuable. And then the last thing, it's again, bigger or not bigger, but is a big important thing is these other things that are going on and how do we think about GHG and peak capacity, and as those become more and more a part of these programs, how do we study those things and frankly, do what we can, I guess I'd say, kind of to foster their inclusion in what we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there was some really good, robust conversation. Sounds like that was about the amount of time that we needed. So thanks everyone for taking the time. So the next steps for us from these two breakout groups is to take everything that we've learned, go back and talk about it as a leadership team, kind of organize some thoughts into next steps, excuse me, and then at the next quarterly member roundtable, which will be in September, I think we decided we'll be kind of distilling this information down to helping the members make decisions around funded research and around kind of where to go with these ad hoc member topics. So that's kind of where we're looking at for the next year. From a next step standpoint, I think the only thing I want to plug is that if you're interested in becoming a member, please reach out to myself or Chad or one of the leadership team members to get involved. We're all volunteer. We can't do this without your guys' help. We can't do this without your support. We pay ACEEE to administer us. And so that's actually, you know, why ACEEE is here, but they've also put in a lot of funding and time as well. They've donated to us. So if you want to keep seeing this going, become a member, learn more about becoming a member through one of the leadership team members. Chad or Greg, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with before we, I think, let people out a little early?
Well, maybe I'll say the big grand stuff for Greg, but I mean, I'll do some quick housekeeping things. We'll have a survey here in a moment. People can fill out to provide feedback on how this all went. We'll have our next QMR coming up soon, the quarterly member roundtable. So for those of you who can make it to that, and of course, we've got our other webinars. We're looking at how these things fit together, a number of the leadership team members, so we're not overwhelming you with like so much stuff happening all the time. And so with that, we plan to take off for the month of August and then restart our next event then in September. But definitely, yeah, I guess I'd say we're always looking to make sure that this is as high value as possible to you. And so again, your involvement in filling out the surveys for the webinars and everything else that we do just makes this so much more valuable to you and to the rest of the community. So thank you all for your input and participation.
And Greg, before you wrap us up, I talked to Greg about this during one of the breaks, but I did want to plug something called the Energy Equity Project, which is a group of program administrators, including Energy Trust of Oregon and BEIC, that are working with universities to try to come up with a universal equity framework for energy energy programs. There is a series of learning sessions where I think the University of Michigan is leading them in their sustainability department. I'm going to go ahead and send the link in the chat, but if you're interested in helping design or provide input into a nationally recognized equity framework for energy efficiency programs, that's a good way to get involved.
All right. Well, there's after Chad and Wendy, there's not much more to say. What I just want to say is thank you everyone so much for joining not only one day, but 2 days of this 5th SEM Summit. We really enjoyed it. I think we're doing some great stuff. The webinars, you know, we're showing some value, the QMRs, these SEM Summits, but we're really always interested in your feedback. If there is something that you see the North American Collaborative can play a role in, you know better than we do. So please drop any one of us a line and we'll get back to you ASAP with, you know, how we can possibly integrate it into our discussions and move it forward. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll catch you up in September. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.